Alright, here we are at Newspaper Rock, a Native American pictograph site. And they are, they're quite a ways down, so let's go see what we can see. Alright, here we are at Puerto Pueblo, a Anasazi or ancestral Puebloan, for all you political correctness Nazis out there, site along the Rio Puerco River here at the park. And as you can see, this is, except the sun's washing out the blocks. See, this is the more typical Pueblo building style, using these shaped sandstone blocks and mortar, as opposed to petrified wood like we saw earlier. Alright, here's the main floor of the structure. This is all that remains, or at least remains above ground, but archaeologists during their excavations found that this pueblo was once 100 rooms. Basically a single-story apartment complex. And when people think of Anasazi or ancestral Puebloans, they think of the big cliff dwellings like Mesa Verde and Montezuma Castle, or the huge pueblos like Casa Bonita and stuff like that. Well, those are the exceptionally preserved ones. I mean, usually when archaeologists excavate a pueblo, this is usually all they find. Whether this is due to the ravages of time or something else, that's something that has to be determined, because many of these structures have been found to have been deliberately destroyed, usually by fire. Was that warfare? Was it some kind of ritualistic killing of the site once you were done with it? That's one of the more contentious points in southwestern archaeology. So here we are at some more petroglyphs, and thankfully these are a lot closer, so you can actually see them. Some kind of horned humanoid figure, like random pickings. It's a couple feet. I don't know. That shape should look familiar to cryptozoologists, but perhaps what is most interesting is that guy there, that spiral or snail shell, whatever you want. Anyway, that is actually a marker for the summer solstice. Because you see, on that day of the year, the summer solstice, sunlight will shine through that crack and onto that. Ancient Britons, spent decades and all that labor and work and engineering to build Stonehenge to mark the summer solstice, all they needed was a couple of rocks and a giant crack. Yeah, there's something, perhaps an angel or butterfly man according to the ancient alien nuts. But we'll talk about petroglyphs later. Here's another view of the ruins. And you can kind of, if you can imagine, over there you can see it comes to an L, extends that way, and then it would do that. Here's what they think it would have looked like based on the excavations, and it's a square. And right now, one of the hypotheses for it being square is defensive. That's so that it can be more easily defended against invaders, marauders, anyone attacking them. This, of course, goes against the modern whitewashing of history that Native Americans were peaceful, lived in harmony, kumbaya kind of thing, but the evidence shows that they were violent motherfuckers like the rest of us. They were no exception. And so, there's a whole book on that that I've been reading. And the configuration of the pueblos is one of the lines of evidence he uses to argue that warfare was both endemic and pervasive in the Southwest. But like I said, there's many who object to that, mainly for, it seems, ideological grounds. And, you'll notice, this has doors, but a lot of pueblos did not have doors. You entered through the roof, a ladder, and it's obviously not the most practical thing in the world, but it was meant to, symbolize the creation myth that was pervasive here in the Southwest, and that humans crawled out of the earth. That's how they were created. And so when you climbed out of your pit dwelling or your pueblo, you were basically reenacting that story. All right, here's some more petroglyphs. And again, the round head with the antenna, the ancient astronaut nut bars would say, "That's an alien, hey, that's a helmet with antenna, derp. And there's a star. It's interesting, kind of, what I've read about stars and their possible connection to warfare. There's Mr. Fantastic. Come out. I don't know. Is that the world's first rubber ducky? I joke. But we'll talk more about this stuff later. When there weren't so many screaming kids. There's a snake. There's a sheep. It's pretty crazy looking. Is that clown skull or wait a minute? Did the Puebloans invent Screaming Man? Picasso was an idea-stealing hack. Possibly the world's first emoticon. And, your first reaction to this would be a stork with a baby. But, as I'll talk about later, they think that might be an ibis, which is native to this area, catching a frog. Because, like, say, if you look closely, you can maybe see what might be water drops, but I know, we'll see. IS. Alright, that's clearly some modern jackass doing that. There's another ancient emoticon. Here's yet more. according to the info panel, that's supposed to be a migration symbol. Yeah, I've heard that for the spirals as well. And that's just a square. Or was it supposed to be a blueprint for a pueblo? Again, who knows? Some kind of bird ghost? I don't know. Some sheep. Just a nice pattern. You know, it just dawned on me. I didn't tell you what a kiva is. Kivas were underground ceremonial structures used for various dances and rituals and whatnot. They're usually circular, but they can be square, rectangular like this. And yeah, this, however, was probably not it's not very big, so I can't imagine too much going on in there, but you know, we can only guess at the ritual practices of a people that disappeared 700, 800 years ago. Alright, what the hell is this? Just what the hell is this? Over on the coast, we're having this severe drought, lots and lots of heat, and yet the desert is the one with the standing water. The desert. And here we are at Chindi Point, overlooking the Great Triassic exposures, the Chinle Formation, where all the fossils in the Rainbow Forest Museum came from. Not necessarily this area, but this formation. That crops out so prominently here. What I'd give to be able to go scrounging around these badlands. Who knows, maybe I can find the next Chindosaurus. One that resolves its taxonomy, body shape, and all that once and for all. About as realistic as all my other dreams. So that was Petrified Forest National Park, and I loved it. I think that was well worth taking the day to go see that. And, you know, there's still a lot of stuff I didn't get to do, like all the vista points on the loop, or Blue Mesa, Crystal Forest, but you know what? That just gives you another reason to go back and visit again. God, look at me, I'm dug in the shadows. I'm gonna start reviewing crappy pop songs. But anyway, I wanted to go back to the petroglyphs. And yes, they were petroglyphs. I initially said pictographs, but the little interpretive plaque had casts of many of them. So they are indeed petroglyphs, made by pecking away the desert varnish that sometimes built up on rocks. And so why are petroglyphs there? And why do people all over the world carve them? And, you know, speculation runs wild. You know, if you remember me talking about earlier how ceremonial use is the great archaeological pigeonhole. You know, that's usually the case for petroglyphs, but, you know, I think they're starting to figure out, though, that they're not so black and white. For example, a panel in 9 Mile Canyon, Utah, called The Great Hunt. You know, they think that because of the detail, because of the structure and all that, they think that may be depicting an actual hunt. And so that may be what petroglyphs, at least in part, are for, is they're recording their world and their activities and the things that they've done. You know, of course, when you get into southwestern petroglyphs, which are practically a study all their own. You know, you do see really abstract stuff, and because I mean, you know, like for example, you know, the crap that has been interpreted as evidence of ancient aliens, you know, and all that, or if you remember the bird with the supposedly the bird with the frog, you know, was someone just carving what they saw in ibis eating a frog, because ibises eat frogs. Well, you don't want to light up on me. Where's my flashlight? Where'd you go? Come on. There you are. Oh yeah, you're totally not going to get sick of that. Yeah, and I'm not going to be able to drive like that for very long, so let's put that away. You'll just have to settle for my shadow figure. But anyway, you know, the interpretive plaque said that, kind of based on modern Native American interpretation, is that they're fertility symbols. You know, you live in the desert, so you're going to be painting lots of water animals in the hopes that they bring lots of rain. No rain means no crops, no drinking water. So you want to do everything to ensure that. And, you know, I'd say there's some truth to that, I think, because the main river that fed Angkor, you know, the great capital city of the Khmer Empire, kind of at the headwaters of that, on a stone just beneath the surface, are all these carvings. They'd say Hindu phallic symbol, a Hindu male fertility symbol inside a Hindu female fertility symbol. And so the idea there is that it's, you know, as the water flows over those symbols, they're blessing the water, they're really bringing out the water's fertility in the hopes that there will be plenty of water to feed and, you know, provide water to the people of Angkor, which is believed to have been the largest pre-industrial city in history. But back to the southwest. You know, you see lots of those foot petroglyphs. And, I mean, what are those about? Are they leaving their mark on history as they leave their mark in the sand as they walk through it barefoot? How do you know? I mean, it could be that those foot petroglyphs aren't human feet. What if they're worshiping Bigfoot? And that is the symbol of Bigfoot, is his big foot. And that's why you see it, is because in ancient times, they feared Bigfoot and his awesome ape strength and animal ferocity, because he's, as a primate, he's kind of this unsettling combination of man and ape. Man and animal, sorry. Combination of man and animal. And so they showed their awe and fear of Bigfoot by carving feet onto rocks. But hey, that's just a theory. A dumbass theory. Oh, come on, like any of you are gonna get that reference. And so it's like when you got to newspaper rock, you know, because in all the promotional images and whatnot, they show this nice, crisp close-up of the petroglyph. Of course, from that, I had no idea that you'd be looking at it from this high promontory. You know, they actually had little telescopes there so that you could look at them. So my recommendation is, if you ever visit Petrified Forest and you want to see newspaper rock, bring a pair of binoculars and or a camera with a telephoto lens. So why are they all the way down there? You know, why not build a stairway down there so that people can get up close? I can imagine there's two reasons for that. The first would be
judging from the rocks, I mean, it could be possible to build a stairway, but it wouldn't be easy. And they'd have to really, in some places, chip away at the rock because the stairway would be really steep. And being a national park, they're trying to preserve as much as they can. So, having to gouge out all this rock just to build a stairway seems kind of silly. And maybe it's also because it's too intrusive into the wilderness. Yeah, that's like when the news was announced that they wanted to build a gondola down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Everyone was up in arms about that. Keep the wild places wild. Oh, why don't you just build an escalator to Mount Everest? All right, I get the analogy, but, building an escalator to Everest would just be the most impractical thing on Earth because it's so high up. So few people go to it, whereas the Grand Canyon gets tens of thousands of visitors from around the world every year. And, being a national park, it's supposed to be for everyone, all of us. But not all of us can see the bottom of the Grand Canyon. For example, you have to camp at the bottom. They do not want people trying to do the bottom and back in one day. You go down, you spend a day going down, and then you spend a day coming up. You camp at some little campground at the bottom. But, again, not all people can do that. And, what about people like, say, my mom? With her, laundry list of health issues, not least of all with her heart. Sometimes she can barely walk 400 feet before her heart, is giving her trouble. So, why not have the ability to let people like that and go down and experience, one of the seven natural wonders of the world. And again, the people crow, keep wild place wild. Oh, it'll look so hideous. It's one spot. It's just one spot that they're doing it. If you don't want that, you can go, anywhere else on the bottom of the canyon. Furthermore, because as long as they don't start putting in gift shops, hotels, and whatnot, I think I'm fine with it. Just build the gondola, just have a little area that people can come down and see the bottom of this canyon that they've only been able to see from up above, because I imagine the bottom and the top are two completely different experiences in viewing the Grand Canyon. But I'm getting off on a tangent there. So, like I said, I think that's reason number one, but probably the greater reason, though, people are idiots. They constantly have to do things they're not supposed to, even though they're told and asked not to. They still do it. If you put people down there, they're going to constantly be putting their hands, they're going to be pawing at these petroglyphs, which will only accelerate their deterioration, and future generations will be able to experience them. And also, people, being idiots, will destroy things just for the sake of destroying things. If you remember a few years ago, those dumbass Boy Scout leaders it was Goblin National Park out in Utah. They knocked one of the rocks off the pedestal and destroyed it. Another example is Red Fleet State Park in Utah. They had lots of well-preserved dinosaur footprints. And when we were there, we learned the story that at some point in time, Boy Scout troop went out to look at that. And because boys are usually, idiotic, rambunctious little turds, they pried several of those footprints out of the rock and threw them into the lake. And then we heard, according to the story, that some divers went out there retrieve the footprints, and now those footprints are in museums. Or hell, that very same trip, me and my dad went to 9 Mile Canyon, which is, branded the world's biggest art gallery. And, it's just this long canyon. It's not 9 miles long. It's way longer than that. And it is just chock full of petroglyphs. And there was one, this huge, human or supernatural figure, and some dumb fuck carved "keep out" over it. Keep out of what? That little rock overhang? This centuries old piece of rock art destroyed, by some guy whose IQ is probably the same as his hat number. Or the number of his hat size, sorry. But if you like petroglyphs, we might see some more. Okay, I'll get the sun out. But if you like petroglyphs, we might see some more tomorrow. Because originally tomorrow was going to be a drive day, because I got about 6 or 7 hours from Gallup, New Mexico to Lubbock, Texas. But I think Petroglyph National Monument might be along the way. I'll have to look it up tonight, so we might see some more petroglyphs. And yeah, I guess I also want to talk a little bit about Puerto Pueblo. Because like I said earlier, I mentioned evidence for warfare. And how these sites are built. And also where they're located. I mean, if you couldn't really see it from the videos and whatnot, but that pueblo was built kind of on a rise overlooking the river. I mean, if you want to defend access to that river, if you want a good view of the surrounding landscape, that's where you want to build it. You find that a lot. A lot of pueblos are, in fact, built on high ground. And site clustering is another bit of evidence for warfare, where you see sites clustering closer together. The idea being that if you need help, your ally is just a short hop away, relatively speaking. But all of this, though, kind of depends on the date. In archaeology, just like history and paleontology, all that, dating is everything. Because you need to establish that chronology, and because it seems like warfare was pretty widespread during the early days of the Anasazi, or ancestral Puebloan. But it seems to come to a lull about what's known as Pueblo III period. And this is when the Four Corners region kind of seems dominated by Chaco. Chaco Canyon is in northwestern New Mexico. That's where Pueblo Bonito is, the biggest of all pueblos, with like 700 rooms, 13 kivas. Huge structure. I mean, I wish we could stop and see that on this trip. But anyway, Chaco kind of seemed to exert an influence, at least, maybe even power, over the Anasazi or ancestral Puebloan world. And that's kind of when, like I said, warfare seems to kind of come to a lull, to a slow period. And it may be because Chaco is keeping everyone under their control, and war is only being waged against outsiders, or possibly even dissidents. Again, there's only so much we can guess about the social practices and ideologies and beliefs of people who are gone and didn't leave us a whole lot of evidence. But then warfare seems to come back with with a vengeance at the beginning of the Pueblo IV period. About 1200 to 1250 AD is when everything just seems to go to shit. Pueblos are being destroyed, usually burned down. And again, whether that was because of invaders or it was a ritual killing, again, we don't know. But I mean, there are many of these sites that where families, people, men and women of all ages, even entire communities were just wiped out in these horrific spasms of violence. Because during this period, trauma on skeleton remains is high. So many bones showing evidence of trauma, violent trauma rather. And because what seems to be going on is because one idea is that the collapse of Chaka kind of left this social and ideological vacuum. Everyone is kind of out for themselves. But paleoclimate data shows that at this time there was a very, very bad drought. I think it's the kind that they refer to as mega droughts. And so, when there's hardly any water, you can't grow enough food for everyone. So you start raiding your neighbors, killing them, and taking their stuff just to survive. You look during this period, defense is wholly back and then some in their minds. They're building these sites to defend water sources, the few remaining springs and all that. And this is when they're building the cliff dwellings. Why go all the way up there? To this site that's so hard to reach to reach. Why would you raise your family way up there? Well, that's because those sites are highly defensible. And at many of these sites you also see watchtowers popping up. And so you're getting into all that, and again, I mentioned kind of the whitewashing of Native American history, trying to portray them as peaceful. During this period, again, just such high stress, I think that people running out of food actually started eating each other. There are many sites that show evidence for cannibalism. You can't just claim cannibalism because you're talking about mankind's deepest taboo. And so basically, can I do this? This? Oh, that's better. Should have done that in the first place. But anyway, you're talking about mankind's deepest taboo. And so, whenever you're going to make a claim for cannibalism, the demand for evidence is going to be high. But these sites satisfy because the bones are butchered in exactly the same way as deer and other animals that we know that they ate. The bones have been broken open to consume the marrow. Many of them have what is called pot polish. And what it is this sheen that appears on a bone when it's been cooked inside a clay pot. So again, it's nasty business, but that's what happens when this is just one of many, many cautionary tales that you try to tell people, don't trash the earth, because we know from the past that when these sorts of epic natural disasters happen, it's not pretty. It gets real ugly. Like I said, even eating people, your fellow man. that's a complex subject for another time. But anyway, the Petrified Forest overall was really neat, and I hope to go back some other day. It's get off my ass. So, but yeah, anyway. And yeah, like I said, I hope I can go back someday and look for some of that Triassic stuff. Because it is just funny. It's always called Dawn of the Dinosaurs when dinosaurs, A, only came around at the end of the period, and B, were not the dominant animals. That would be the Pseudotsuchians. The stuff like the Rauisuchians, the Aegidosaurs, the Hesperoseuchids, or something like that. They were the dominant animals. Dinosaurs were just, they were lower on the food chain. And in fact, because of that irony, I actually got a t-shirt. It says Dawn of the Dinosaurs, and yet the only dinosaur in the picture is getting eaten by a phytosaur. Yeah, great stuff. And I'd say the scenery it's up there. I mean, I still think the John Day fossil beds are some of the most spectacular geology I've ever seen. But I'd say Petrified Forest is definitely getting up there, near to that. And so, that's it for today. Again, I hope you're enjoying these vlogs of my journey through the Southwest to SVP and back. Like I said, tomorrow is going to be a